Our next story is about influence. At the center of this story is one Adnan Syed. He is an American man who recently walked out of a prison in Baltimore. Adnan was serving 23 years in jail, and that too for a crime he never committed. The story begins in 1999. Adnan was accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Hae Min Lee. Adnan and Lee were high school classmates. In 1999, Lee was found dead. Her body was found buried in the woods. A year later, a jury found Adnan guilty of premeditated murder. He was labelled a scorned lover and he was jailed for life. Adnan was all of 18 and now he is 41. Adnan spent the last 2 decades in jail, all the while maintaining innocence and appealing the court's decision. Not once, but twice. In fact, multiple times. Adnan's application was never accepted, but something changed in 2014. A family friend of the Syeds shared Adnan's story with a journalist, pleading with the journalist to reinvestigate the case, look into it. And now, this journalist started a podcast, a famous podcast, in autumn that year. The podcast was called Serial. It tried to piece together a timeline of the events leading to Lee's disappearance and death. It also revealed fresh details and potential suspects. The podcast became a huge hit. The first season alone was downloaded more than 300 million times. It also inspired a 4-part documentary. Then in 2015, Syed was granted a fresh trial. And this was partly based on the evidence that was uncovered during the making of the podcast. For example, a touch DNA testing was done on Lee's clothes. Multiple DNA samples were found on her shoes, but none of the DNA matched Adnan's. His conviction was quashed on the 20th of September. So, was Adnan's conviction wrongful? Yes, says the Baltimore State Attorney's Office. Adnan has now been cleared of murder. Had it not been for the podcast, he would likely still be behind bars. You see, that's the power of good content. It can move, it can influence, and perhaps in this case, even deliver justice. A part of the podcast focused on how the jury could have been biased because Adnan was a Muslim. It pointed out that the other 2 suspects who are now in focus have crime records. Both have been booked for violence against women. One has even been convicted. One of the suspects never made it to trial despite failing a lie detector test. In 2019, a man named Curtis Flowers walked out of prison. He had been behind bars for 23 years. Curtis was a black man. He was tried 6 times for the same crime by the same white prosecutor. A podcast brought Curtis's case to light. His conviction was finally quashed by the US Supreme Court. There are numerous such cases around the world, and each one makes us believe in the impact, in the influence of powerful content. It gives us hope that in times where the word influence has become synonymous with paid posts and Instagram influencers, there is still content that can bring about a change for good. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.